sixth meeting of the Equal Employment Practices Commission. I'm Sasha Ruja, chairing this meeting. First, item number 2, approval of the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes of November 21st, 2019.
Great.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? New business. Number 3, proposed meeting schedule for 2020.
So I'm gonna pass the meeting schedule, I think
We
everybody has a
have,
copy
we have
of
it.
it. If there's any, conflicts, I guess you can take it home and maybe email me and let me know.
I'm not sure I'm gonna make that March meeting, but I'll double check.
Okay. So we'll approve this in the first meeting in January. Can everyone make the January 30th meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Because then we can approve the rest of the days, for and give you time to check.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Not yet? We're working on it. We're working on it.
Great. Old business. Item A, letter meeting with DCAS regarding EEO case practice reviews.
So I distributed a letter via email that I intended to send as a draft letter to DCAS, explaining our charter mandate and some of the conflicts and the overlaps, and perhaps requesting, I don't know, a meeting. I don't know how to end it.
Well, it seems to me that the best way to resolve it is for the parties to meet. I can't think of any other way, otherwise you're writing things back and forth. You can either agree to share, which seems to me a duplication of effort and sort of stupid, because it's a waste of resource. Or you can agree to undertake to be someone's primary on some of it and someone's secondary on some of it, and then you just sort of divide it. Or you can agree to argue, which is the third item, which is to say, I have, by the city charter, a requirement that I do this. The charter, I think, overrides any secondary legislation and is primary. We can play games with that, but I think it's I'm probably speaking the truth, because the charter is really a higher, the Constitution is more important than a piece of legislation below it, and a piece of legislation can therefore be deemed to be unconstitutional because it doesn't comport with the Constitution. Your jurisdiction comes from the charter.
I think that's in regard to item B.
Wait, I was just gonna say, okay, so,
it's two
yeah,
different
let me
issues
back
with
up.
DCAS, yeah.
So, I think that was my mistake. So item A is the meeting regarding EEO case practice reviews, and actually the letter that I wanna send, which I think the chair should sign, to the DCAS commissioner, is saying that, because the EPC has a certain function and makes recommendations to DCAS and has its own, I guess, standards, that we will abstain from participating in their EEO practice reviews. So, that's the letter that I sent. If I need to print another copy, I can pass it around, but I think it should be signed by the chair. I first had my name on it.
I think either of the boards sign it.
I'll let you review it and then you can print it out.
Great.
The end of the-
Does anyone need further clarification on this?
I'm sorry, you're speaking out of order. I
No, no,
didn't
no.
know it was up to date.
We can jump there next, but are there any
Yeah, I think
questions
it was
about this
mine.
issue? The case practice
But
review?
as I think out loud, the charter is original jurisdiction, and their attempt to, the city council, their attempt to put jurisdiction elsewhere really doesn't fly because the charter preempts it. So I really think it's a preemption argument.
But the issue is, I think that if I'm not mistaken, the legislation amended the charter to create
It
OCI.
can't.
Okay, I mean,
It can't amend,
They can.
how can it amend the charter? The charter, you have to go back
Oh,
to
is
have
it
a vote.
specifically to amend the charter?
Right.
We should look at
it was to add a section under DCAS's
But you can't amend the charter. The charter, in order to amend the charter, you've gotta go through a charter revision commission. and
So
then
the-
to
so the
body
local
politic.
The
law.
council has a
Local
practice
law.
of creating
It was a local law.
offices within city agencies all the time that then sometimes
But
are
this one
excluded.
is preempted by our jurisdiction.
Right.
So I mean, that's
And
why I
then
said,
in
there are
the-
a lot, there were, when I went through, there are 3 different ways you could deal with it, you sit and meet with them. But it seems to me that you can still sit and meet with them, but you start off from the position, this is our jurisdiction under the charter. In order to alter this jurisdiction is our understanding, I mean, I checked with a lawyer from the city law department, but it's certainly my understanding, in order to do that, you've gotta go through charter revision and go back to the body politic to change the charter. Since that didn't happen, and we're preempted, we can sit down and discuss this.
Yep.
But it seems to me that you ought to understand, we have primary jurisdiction.
Yep, so I'll be submitting a formal request to meet with, council staff on
You
this.
could.
I had we had a discussion about this right after Thanksgiving. I would like to sit down with them. I mean, also the reality that I was appointed to chair the commission and then the council passes or is trying to advance a bill to undermine, from my perspective, the impact of, the commission itself. So I'd like to sit down with the council and talk to them about. the
But I think you
particular
start
legislation.
from, I mean, I would double check with what I'm saying clearly,
Well,
but I
sounds
think
right.
it's a
Sounds
preemption
right.
argument.
I agree. I think it was, I can't remember the local law, but it's a local law, that was passed. It wasn't an amendment to the charter.
And
Yes,
And I'm assuming the commission wasn't consulted or brought into any of
we
it.
were. We presented testimony where we said that these are our responsibilities.
Right.
Yeah, well, you're in also, yeah. Jesus.
So.
But we didn't say, these are our charter mandated responsibilities,
I think we did,
did we?
because every testimony, we say what our charter mandated responsibilities are.
Oh, that's where you start.
Right, so I can look back at the testimony where we
Okay.
said that these functions are, our functions, but, yeah, I think.
I think you probably are in preemption.
Yes,
I mean, if they wanna make the change, they certainly can. There was a charter revision commission, they can go through and put a charter, and they had a charter revision
Totally.
commission. The council itself had
Yes.
one, and they did not put it within that. We voted on the charter revisions that came out of the city council charter revision commission.
right, and we
Yes.
sent revisions to the charter,
Yeah,
well, for the
We
EPC.
wanted to change the charter by adding to our, powers.
We sent our suggested revisions, which, but
any
I think
other,
that's excellent.
Well, actually, as part of that same discussion, go back to what we said, because a portion of what you met in the fire department lawsuit, which is, so what did you do about it? What we were attempting to get under the charter revision is attempting to get some powers so we can in fact do something about our findings.
Yep.
Right now, we have very little power other than saying naughty, naughty. And naughty, naughty leads to repeat behavior. So we have said naughty, naughty to the fire department several times, and they continue to have the same behavior.
okay. Anything further on either of these issues before we move forward? Okay. Item number 5, audit update. Okay, status of sexual harassment audits.
Okay, so I think, where's my other page?
Hello.
I think there are 3 audits that, 3 preliminary determination, no, right, that still have to be sent. And we're probably gonna be able to send them, I believe, I'm confident that we'll be able to send them by the end of the year. In terms of final determinations, there are 4 that have to be sent.
Correct.
And we should be able to send them by the end of the year.
Possibly, it depends, if,
We may not, because they have 2 weeks
They have
to
2
respond
weeks,
to the preliminary.
but they'll definitely be out, I would say by the end of the for first full week in January, like all the FDs, I would imagine. The PDs, one is ready to go, it can probably be sent either today or tomorrow, and the other two, we're just, wrapping them up, we've already had calls with the agencies, so they'll be sent definitely by the end of the year. But they do get the 2-week optional response period before the issuance of the FD, so based upon the timing of our sending the preliminary determinations, either this week or next week, their response period won't expire until beginning of January, which is when we can issue the FDs. But
Okay.
that's for 4.
That's for 4, but let me just say this. Out of 48 audits that we started, we pretty much issued, we would be able to issue preliminary determinations for all 48.
Wow.
And we would have issued final determinations for at least 44.
It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
congratulations.
It's phenomenal,
Wow.
thank you.
You've got quite a.
Which
cool
is why we're
working-
gonna show a lot of employee appreciation today. But I'm really proud because all of the nuances that go into the audit and all of the tools that we use to collect information and the surveys, the questionnaires, the questions that we ask, the templates that we developed, the wording, the coaching for people to, believe that they can do more than they have, has pretty much paid off, so I'm very proud, and I'm just looking forward to doing a lot less next year. Less but more, maybe less in terms of the audits and meeting our mandate, we're definitely gonna be able to do, I'm confident that we'll be able to do the 30, around 36 that we normally do, but then we can have time for some other things. So,
Well, and don't you have some other tasks
Yes.
anyway that have been given to you by the city council?
Right.
Without having been the ability to hire the economists that you need in order to undertake those
Right.
tasks?
So, next year, we will probably be doing less audits, but more of the research type work.
Great.
But yeah,
Congrats.
An incredible job.
thank you.
Item B, final determine resolution. So we are voting on resolution 2019 AP 236 030/2019 on nurses.
I move that we approve it.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Great.
Wow.
Sharice, you started talking about the plan already for item C, but prospective audit plan for 2020.
Why don't I have that printed here?
I don't.
Okay, I might have to pull it up. Do you wanna go ahead while I try to pull it?
Sure.
With the,
Let me
compliance?
skip
Do the compliance up here.
Should we jump to, item 6, compliance resolution. We have 3. I'll read them all out. Resolution 2019 AP 236 478 2019, C41 Brooklyn CB8. Resolution 2019 AP 236 019 2019, C42 OMB, and resolution 2018 AP 236 904 2019, C43 Office of the Police DA. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve all 3 of those compliance resolutions.
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
You are to be congratulated on the
Wow.
office of the Queens County District Attorney. Given
Oh my
the
gosh,
political
yes.
changes,
We,
you are really to be congratulated.
the assigned analyst and the audit manager and myself had multiple conversations with the EO officer, with the principal HR professional, and they worked diligently to implement the outstanding corrective actions. The last few pertain to making sure that they had underutilization studies and an analysis of their recruitment and selection criteria if there were identified areas of underutilization. And they put together guidelines that are very thorough, that basically give a point-by-point, step-by-step procedure for people who are in the hiring process to make sure that they're checking to make sure if the title is underutilized before they hire it, they're making sure that the qualifications are required, they're looking at the recruitment plan for the identified recruitment sources based upon the underutilized categories. It's a very thorough, and comprehensive guidelines that they put together, and they even included for review of those guidelines and the recruitment sources and the recruitment plans on a quarterly basis and a thorough review on an annual basis, and identify who's responsible for doing that as
You
well.
are super
That's-
congratulated.
that's,
It is
great.
really
Yeah.
turning over and changing what had been historically in place. It's gonna take them a while, and I suspect to adjust it, but
Yeah.
it's terrific.
Yeah, I looked back, and the last audit we did, which ended in 2017, was the issuance of a partial compliance
Mhm.
based upon some outstanding corrective actions. So based upon our quadrennial cycle, the last audit we completed before that was in 2012. So the last time they got a certificate of completion, certificate of compliance was in 2012.
Wow.
So we're hopeful that if they follow the procedures and policies and forms and all of the things that they've put into place during the compliance monitoring period, that the next time we come around and visit them, that things will be hopefully a very different story. We'll see. So yeah,
Good job.
thank you, thank you. The other, I guess, a quick compliance monitoring update, we have, as Sheree said, 30 determinations of completion, determinations of compliance have been issued for 2019 audit plans, and they are incorporated in our total of 43 that we've passed. We are up to compliance number 43. We currently have 14 agencies in compliance monitoring, and some of them have only a few corrective actions, so hopefully we can get them wrapped up in the first quarter of the next year.
Terrific.
Wow. Incredible job.
Thank you. Our team is,
Working hard.
they are
Wow.
working very
This
hard,
is,
and they are taking a great source of pride in making sure that we
Right.
ensure that we meet our mandate.
That's
Did
wonderful.
did you speak about lasers yet, or?
Right, we did a.
That was just an update.
That was just, no, I didn't speak about the council yet.
We did a
Oh,
vote
okay,
on
we
next
voted
year's.
on- okay, so that's
So we
the
can
last
sign
one.
it. Yeah, cool. Should we go to audit plan?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go through briefly what's on the audit plan for 2020. This is sort of a overall memo that I sent to the analysts, giving them instructions of what they should do to prep for the audit. These audits are, these initiation letters will be mailed on December 20th, which is tomorrow. There's 34 agencies. Usually I tell them to get familiar by reviewing, anything about the agency, the quarterly reports, the websites, the previous audits, the annual diversity plans, any
Time out for a
information
minute,
they can
Sharice.
find.
So we have completed all of the sexual harassment audits, is that correct? Or we
No.
can? No,
We will be
this
with
is it.
these, right,
Okay, so this is year 2 of
year
This will be
3.
year 3.
year
Wow.
3 of sexual harassment. At the end of year 3, you will have reviewed every agency and every other entity that we have jurisdiction over, and would have the ability to issue a report on the status of sexual harassment within the city?
We
The
saw-
question I'm asking.
Reporting is due by law May.
We don't have to.
For 2020.
2021.
Well, that's local law 13, which is the EPC reporting on the status of underutilization and impact for the city.
But that's not what I'm asking.
So, right, we have another report that we're trying to get ready for by the end of by the beginning of 2021.
Yes, but you will
In
have.
terms of the sexual
Yes.
harassment audit,
We have a few audits left. I
we
think.
have, I think, a set of community boards that we did not want to go back to, because I think we've been at the community boards within the last 3 years,
And
but
we
if we
should
have to,
We need to do we wanted to do their,
Borough
borough
president.
president's office, and that's on the 2020 cycle. So the community boards for that particular, borough president's office, which I can't recall which one it is, it's on the cycle for 2021. As are, I think, 4 other agencies that we just finished doing follow-up audits on, of their EPA audits, because of areas of non-compliance. So we haven't done the sexual harassment practices audit on, I think, 4 of those agencies, so they're all scheduled for 2021. But there's
So
not
this-
that many.
2021 would be the Queens and the Manhattan community boards, only because
we're doing those now?
We like to do community boards every 5 years, because if we go back to them every 4 years or every 3 years for an agency of 3 people, it just doesn't really make
Okay,
sense.
I'm gonna go back and repeat my
But-
question again. If
so
we
no.
will have completed,
No,
is the answer right? Okay,
no, and we're giving you the reasons why, but we can go back and do the community boards in 2020, but we would like to do the borough presidents first, and plus, it would be onerous for us to audit them within, I think the last time we were in community boards were maybe,
2018,
yeah, 3 years ago.
2017, so 2 years ago. Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
I was just looking for a public relations piece that said, we have investigated the city's employment practices vis-à-vis sexual harassment, and we have found not following. But if we won't have completed it, we can't do it. Okay, thank you.
right, we planned to do it, so your question is valid, but then we got the local law 13, mandate, so that kinda,
We could do both. It
well,
just
that's
gets
why we're
like-
asking for more staff. For local law 13. So. I guess we'll just keep you posted of how we're going, in 2020. These are the agencies for 2020, Office of the Actuary, the Tax Commission, the Civilian Complaint Review Board, the Public Advocate, Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings,
Do it.
the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications, the Independent Budget Office, the Office of Labor Relations, the Board of Education Retirement System, the Law Department, the Department of Education, the Bronx Community College, Bronx, Kingsborough, Hostos, and Gutman Community colleges, and we have not done Gutman,
Ever.
so that's a completely
New one.
new, it's not a new audit, but because it's a fairly new school, we
Yeah.
haven't
On the-
Been-
Yeah.
we haven't audited that agency yet, or that school. The Commission on Human Rights, LaGuardia Community College, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Investigation, the Department of Corrections, the Police Pension Fund, the Department of Environmental Protection, the Housing Authority, District Attorneys for the Bronx, Kings, and Richmond. And this is why we were scheduled to go back to the Queens County District Attorney, but we can't because they just
We
issued-
literally, it would be like sending them a compliance certificate and an initiation letter in the same
You
week.
can't do
Yes,
that.
So, yeah.
so we would have to go back in 2021, which would just be 2 years.
Right, but it's a different kind of audit,
Right.
so,
The Office of the Special Narcotics Prosecutor, Department for the Aging, the Civil Service Commission, the New York City County, the New York County Public Administrator and the Kings County Public Administrator, the Fire Department, DCAS, and the Queensborough President's Office. Those are the agencies on the 2020 audit.
They're large and small.
Yeah, but this is pretty hefty, because there are no community boards or anything in there, or no like, well, I guess maybe the Civil Service Commission would be one
Button
of the
small.
tiniest,
The community
Agency.
colleges,
and the public administrator's offices are generally not too large.
yeah.
right,
But then there's
So-
huge agencies here,
right,
like NYCHA.
And
I mean,
DCAS,
yeah, NYCHA, DCAS, the fire department.
DOE.
Yeah, the, corrections,
Do it.
Yeah, there's.
They'll be busy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
right. So, this is what we have on our plate. And we've already assigned analysts, and if you look really closely, we have new, because
Wow.
we're, looking to hire one more analyst who will be trained on one audit before
Do you
pretty
need
much it.
approval from us?
Yeah. You can vote on the audit plan, or if there's anything that you see here that, I mean, I don't think you have an opinion one way or the next, but.
Does it require approval?
Yes, I mean, it's the commission's audit plan,
Right.
so if there's anything on here that you don't approve of, now's the time to talk about it, but generally, the commission approves of the audit plans.
I move that we approve it.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections?
And I can send this, in an email, because I thought, was the audit plan in the, cause I don't have it printed here.
I don't think it was.
I don't think it was.
Told that it was not printed. It wasn't generally printed. But I think it's in the executive file.
Just
So we can,
I'll
send it
a
as an
copy.
information
Yeah.
copy of what we approved. Thank you.
It's good to
Um,
have it.
The last item on compliance update in number 6 is item B, New York City Council Compliance Monitoring Correspondence.
so, as you're aware, we are in the compliance monitoring phase of the New York City Council's, sexual harassment prevention response practices audit. As the director of compliance, after 4 months of no submissions, I submitted a letter to their principal EO professional indicating our concerns that they were not going to be able to get a determination of compliance. They did not respond. Then Sharice, as the executive director, sent a similar letter to, the chief of staff, and we did not get a response. So January is the 6th month of compliance monitoring for the council.
Off the top of your head, know the name of chief of staff?
Jason Goldman.
Goes from Jason.
Yes, and so, in terms of escalation, because it is their last month, we drafted a letter to the speaker, Corey Johnson, that the entire commission, with the exception of the chair who is abstaining, can sign, and it basically just indicates that we're very concerned because we are not going to be able to issue a compliance certificate at the end of the compliance monitoring period if they haven't demonstrated compliance with the 29 corrective actions, and advising them that that becomes public document. So,
It is both.
We also put a clause in here that specifically what we should put in here, saying that, this board is especially troubled by the council's implementation status because it sends a message that is inconsistent with the council's passage of the Stop Sexual Harassment
Right.
in NYC Act, which is comprised of 11 laws designed to strengthen the New York City's anti-sexual harassment policies and combat sexual harassment in the workplace. By demonstrating compliance with the assigned corrective actions, the council can effectively reinforce its commitment to the spirit of the Stop Sexual Harassment in NYC, as well as exhibit adherence to Chapter 11 of the Rules of the Chapter 2 of the Rules of the Council, which were amended by the passage of Resolution 0272/2018 relating to discrimination and harassment.
the same day that
Who
they.
wrote, who were the council members? I'm happy with that language, but different question and copying. Who were the council members who promoted that legislation? It wasn't only Helen.
There was 11 different council members.
I would copy every 11 on that list.
Okay, so we should revise.
I'm sorry.
That's, I would copy all the people who
Yes.
You
wrote
said
this.
this 117 times,
No,
but
it's
can you
fine.
just say it one more time?
Sure.
So basically, you're saying that you're reaching out, no response, and then when we received the correspondence from Jason, he said what?
No, the last correspondence that we received from Jason, who's chief of staff,
Yeah.
was in response to our final determination letter, in
And it
which,
was to me.
and it was to Sharice.
And he said that it was very nasty, and he said that, that we're trying to, what did he say, that we're playing a political?
It was just, it was implying that the EPC was not being cooperative, and that the,
I can get that.
Essentially,
Yeah.
didn't he say, how can you find against us when we didn't submit anything?
that's exactly it.
That's
and
what he
that-
said.
Because they think by not submitting anything, which they did submit stuff,
And we included,
so I don't understand that
Why
either.
did it say that?
Because they didn't fill out any of our questionnaires. They submitted, their plan, their policy, and some other.
they submitted a few documents, I can't recall them off the top of my head.
But they didn't submit any data, as it.
And we did, in our preliminary and final determinations, we did reference the documents that they provided us.
And gave them credit for
And
whatever we could give them credit for.
Yes, but if they haven't displayed that they are utilizing those documents or following those documents or following the directives in those documents, like for example, the rules of the council, which were amended the same day that the Stop Sexual Harassment in New York City Act was passed. They amended the rules of the council to provide for training and for, I believe, a review of complaints and that kind of thing. So it was tightening their own practices, which is the reference that we're talking about when we indicate that resolution number, that not only would this be in conformance with the legislation that they passed, but also their own rules of conduct that
And
they.
we are taking no notice of the fact that they've had staff complain about sexual harassment. We don't, our letters are not talking about that, or the public complaints that have gone forward.
We are only referring to the outstanding audit and the process.
Right.
And that's
Can
it.
I'm fine with the spirit of the letter, but I'm just wondering about when we highlight the, council's passage of the Stop Sexual Harassment NYC Act in this paragraph, that we're drawing attention to that one piece of legislation that was passed and how they're inconsistent, we believe that they're inconsistent with their own legislation. There are probably, my guess is dozens of other legislations that the council has passed over the years where our audit would speak to those other pieces of legislation. Does that make sense? Like, I imagine that they have passed legislation around protecting, immigrant rights or religious rights or any number of things that maybe would come under, like, we would touch upon in our audits in some way, shape, or form. So I'm just wondering, like, does it make sense to pull out one specific piece of legislation?
But this is only a sexual
Yeah,
harassment
this
audit.
This
audit
is only
is-
about it? That's
Right,
only-
this audit has a specific scope, and that's
Sexual
sexual
harassment.
harassment prevention and response.
Yeah,
This
So
was
that's-
only the sexual harassment.
yeah, okay.
audit. And that's the
I
reason.
withdraw my comment.
Do you have a problem with copying the councilmen members who have proposed the legislation? No, I just do
Because
with
we
my.
copy all sorts of folks, so it's
Yeah,
like, it makes
yeah.
sense for other people, especially if we think they might be helpful.
I think they would be helpful.
So you would like the sponsors of the 11 bills that comprise that act to be copied?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, so here it is. I mean, he says a lot of nasty things in here, but he says, I'm writing to express my extreme disappointment in a manner in which the Equal Employment Practices Commission appeared to have used its audit process to falsely portray the council in substantial non-compliance with proper sexual harassment policies and procedures. In fact, the council is committed to preventing. So that's how it starts, and it says, this is inadequately reflected in your final determination, because the EPC refused to even work with the council on a threshold issue over the extent of the EPC's jurisdiction over the council, which is the city's legislative body and not an agency. So, just the tone of it and the nonsense, I mean,
We have jurisdiction.
So, wait, can you go back to that paragraph, please?
notwithstanding this disagreement, which has gone on for over a decade, and as I reiterate to you in the letter dated April 25th, the council is willing to voluntarily engage in a review of its practices. However, the EPC denied us a chance to do so. Completely false, inaccurate, I mean, I don't know. This, all I can say is that this person thinks that this letter will become public record, and so that's why they're writing it, because we've given them chances, we've given them extensions.
You know what I would do? I would attach that letter with your letter.
We did respond to this letter, I believe.
Yes. So,
Well, attach it as a.
I mean, there's a lot of other
Attach
stuff
them
in
as
it.
appendices, dear.
But you can tell by the first two paragraphs that that's the tone of the
just
correspondence.
attach
I mean, notwithstanding his response, we have jurisdiction.
Was this my letter? Yes. So, I said, we're in receipt of your correspondence. The EPC understands the council's concerns and takes matters of confidentiality seriously, because I think they brought up the fact that they wanted their responses to be confidential, which I don't understand, but as such, during audits and compliance monitoring, the EPC requests redacted files in response to FOIL requests with a high regard to preserving confidentiality. The FOIL provisions that allow an agency to withhold documents. Is this the FOIL one? This might be the FOIL.
That was, yes, that was in response, there was a
Let me
letter,
see, oh, EPC.
there was a letter from, I believe, their general counsel asking us
Here it
how
is.
to apply FOIL to their submissions. And
Here it is.
we said we cannot give you advice on how to interpret FOIL,
Right.
FOIL law.
So this is the one where, this is my response to the nasty letter. We're in receipt of your response to our final, to fulfill the EPC's powers and duties. The charter assigns a board of 5 commissioners comprised of 2 appointees, each appointed by the mayor and the council, and a chair jointly appointed by the mayor and speaker of the council. The charter required appointment of the EPC's board in this manner ensures balance, insulates the EPC from political influence, and permits exercise of jurisdiction over the employment practices of both mayoral and non-mayoral entities, the offices of elected officials, and political appointees. To that end, as an oversight entity that conducts hundreds of audits, the EPC consistently applies audit procedures, protocols, and standards to all audited entities, because there was sort of I think he implied that we weren't consistently applying it
There was a lot
to
of
the council.
implication that we, and actually explicit, reference to us as mayoral agency, which is why we indicated we are not a mayoral agency, this is how we are, our board is appointed, which is to be in writing.
I would attach,
And the EPC.
Sharice, I would attach his letter and your response to it as part of the attachment that you're writing to the speaker. I mean, you really do have to give him some background,
Okay.
that you didn't, this is not, we really truly wanna resolve this. We don't wanna find you not in compliance. This is, after all, your statute. It sends a terrible message throughout to everybody that the city council didn't follow the sexual harassment guidelines, which is all
And we
reminded.
have a reporter that consistently asks for the council, whether or not we've completed the council audit.
I mean, I just,
But, so I ended on a good
Barbara,
note,
where
because
are
I
you
said
coming
we're
from?
authorized, I pretty much say that we're authorized because the council falls within our the EPC's purview set forth in 1150 and chapter 36. Further, chapter 36 requires that after the issuance of a final determination, that we assign a compliance monitoring period, that the audited entity respond in 30 days, and submit a report to, demonstrate how they're complying. The charter requires the audited entities to submit documentation that supports the implementation of each corrective action the EPC prescribed as a result of the audit. Although the council did not submit the requested documents by means of the EPC's data collection systems, the EPC's findings incorporate and credit the few documents that the council provided during the review, analysis, and evaluation phases. As the charter requires an audited entity to make monthly reports to the EPC to remedy areas of non-compliance, it is incumbent on the council to determine what is most responsive to the corrective actions prescribed in the EPC's preliminary and final determinations, and provide that information to the EPC within the 6-month period. To date, beyond the council's assertions that it is already complying with various components of the corrective actions prescribed, the council has not provided any substantive documentation to demonstrate its claims of implementation. The EPC remains receptive to considering all efforts and practices by the council that are consistent with or parallel to the corrective actions prescribed. As Jen is committed to working collaboratively with the council during the 6-month period, which is scheduled to end on January 31st, and then.
I don't have your new letter in front of me, but it seems to me you might want to incorporate that paragraph in your letter saying, as I stated in X, whatever the date is of that letter, and just repeat that paragraph.
Where's the letter?
I would just,
Oh, can I?
yeah, I would just repeat it.
I'm pretty sure we end every letter like that. The APC remains committed to assisting the council with
Yeah,
achieving
but as
full
stated
compliance
in my,
before the.
as stated in my letter of X to whatever. Go back to whatever that date of that letter is, whoever you addressed it to. But as stated in my letter, which is attached.
Can we have this signed today? I can
Yeah.
edit it.
Yeah. You're feeding us. You'll get stained.
So, this is,
This could end up in the city and not be nice. That being the digital newspaper that he's following, the report is following from.
Is there anything else that you want to read from council, or any other questions?
So you want all of us to sign it?
yes, I think it would, and if we, well, we have to copy the other council members, which we have to find, but I think if the commission members sign it and send it to the speaker, that it would have more weight than just
Okay.
one commissioner or even me signing it.
Get it done, so we can
Sounds
sign.
like a great idea.
Is there any other
You could
business?
put the copies on another page, it need not be on the face, I don't think.
Any other business to
Okay.
discuss? No? Great.
Can we move to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, please.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.